Evaluating relevant sources in historical research. We talked about various sources which are to be included in historical research. Like we talked about two major kinds of evidences to be taken from history. We talked about documents, and the nature of documents could be like the government documents, institutional, organizational, personal documents. And then we also talked about remains and relics as are sources for answering research questions in the paradigm of historical research. But there is a big question, and that question is that how would you make sure that the evidences you are supporting are really justified and they are authentic, right? So these are the points which are to be answered in this session, that how would you evaluate the quality of sources, the authenticity of the sources which you are presenting in your historical research, right? So there are various steps which are to be taken care of. The first thing is that you can, like every authentic material, like every reliable material, you must be taking care of whatever source you are referring to in your study, right? So the first thing is that there are very common, very general techniques which are to be applied. But particularly for the evidences in the area of historical research, you are required to take extra care of your documents and your sources which are to be presented in your historical research, study based on your historical research. So the first question is, when you are using any source, it could be like the text-based source or any document, right? So you must question that who created that source, that document, right? So that question number one. And the author of the source would tell you that how authentic the person was. And is that really something which could be presented in your research as a source in order to answer your research question using the paradigm of historical research? So that is point number one, that who created that source, right? If it is text, then who wrote that text, right? Then how neutral was that person who wrote it, the person who created that? So in other words, the question is that how neutral is the source itself, right? So if it's any kind of document, how neutral it is. Was there any biasness attached, right? And how you could establish the neutrality of that document. So as researcher, you are also required to convince your reader that whatever document you are presenting is basically something which is based on the neutral background, right? And there is impartiality of the text, so that the objectivity in the research is maintained. So that's really important for particularly for sources which are to be presented in historical research. Then the point is that for whom was that document created? It's really an important point. While addressing your research questions, you must provide the evidence that how important for the person who created the document was neutral, right? And for what purpose was that document created, right? So that when you are answering your research question, you maintain neutrality and impartiality. Then the next question is that how significant is the source document which you are using in your research study, right? So if it is a significant kind of document, you must be focusing, you must be using it. But if it is like not really a significant document and it's not well known, so how would you establish the authenticity of that document in order to address your research question? So it's up to you as researcher that how do you create significance and how do you maintain the importance of the source which you are presenting in order to address your research question. The point is that evidence and support is required in order to establish your argument, right? And in order to prove your argument, it is important for any kind of research. But particularly when you are carrying out your historical research, then you are required to provide support and evidence in the favor of your argument, right? With the points with whom you are agreeing, right? So the point is that you must be evaluating the source, right? That how authentic is the source and how it could be presented as an evidence, as a support in order to prove your argument, right? And then you must also be planning and thinking about the relationship among various sources, primary sources and secondary sources, and you would be switching back and forth in order to show that how important it is to support an evidence and to provide an argument. Okay, so that could also be one way to bring authenticity and quality to your study in historical research. Your research, it could be of any kind, but particularly when you are dealing with historical research, you must be creating your research paper, your thesis, in such a way that it's beyond questions, it's reliable, it's authentic, and it's really valid. And when you are doing historical research, because historical research is a research which is based on qualitative studies, so when it's a qualitative study, you must be bringing in the quality on the basis of evidences and proofs from history, right? So the point is that you should be coming up with evidences and sources which are reliable and which are credible, right? So that's the point. And last but not the least is the point that you must be evaluating the truth of the document, right? The truth of the content before submitting it to your research study in order to prove your argument and your evidence. So these are the points which you must be taking care of while using sources in historical research.